All right, it's 6 o'clock on May 2nd. Calling to order EPD committee. Everybody's here. So that brings us to public comment. All right, that's the first of two opportunities. Next, what do we hear on reading and approval of minutes? All right, we have a motion. Is it
Second.
Second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Minutes are approved as presented. Reports, communications from city officers. I'm going to go ahead and toss this over to Mr. Madden.
Chairman, members of the committee, the budget is winding down. We have a couple months left in the fiscal year. The community development budget is where it should be for right now. We also had the Pizza Blues and Jazz Festival this past weekend, and speaking with the community development staff, the event went well. I was unable to attend Friday night, but I was because they had a Bethel bash and Mauldin elementary bash that I had to attend, but I was able to attend Saturday, and the turnout was well. So that concludes the report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Madden. Any questions for Mr. Madden? All right, we have our City Center Village update from the Parker Group.
Yeah,
Madden?
Yes, the Parker Group and I met this morning. They do not have a report for today, but I will speak with you, Mr. Matney, after the meeting to share some of the things discussed to set up a meeting to brief the full council.
Thank you, Mr. Madden. With there being no unfinished business, that takes us to new business, which is amended resolution to certify the textile mill.
Yes, Mr. Matney, members of the committee. So what you have before you looks very familiar. Earlier this year, City Council approved a resolution to certify several properties in the city center area for a textile mill credit. Upon review of that by the Parker Group's attorney, there was an error, multiple errors, in the parcel numbers that were listed in the original resolution. So what's being requested via the Parker Group is for the committee to consider an amended resolution with the correct property parcel numbers listed in the resolution.
Brandon, do we need to rescind the original resolution and offer this as a new resolution?
No, what you have is an amended resolution. So it'll amend the previous resolution that was approved and provide the updated parcel numbers.
Only reason that I'm asking that is because that previous resolution has been signed, sealed, and delivered, and it's tough to go back and amend what has been signed, sealed, and delivered. Are we in any jeopardy if we amend what has already been signed, sealed, and delivered?
No, okay. It wouldn't. You certainly can do it. It will not hurt.
Any additional questions for Mr. Madden?
I just had a question about some of the other property, the tax numbers. Was all of this in a textile mill area?
Yes, the Council of the Appalachian Council of Governments has certified that every parcel that's listed in there it qualifies as a textile mill.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Madden, I just was kind of curious, what the mistake, how did that arise?
The mistake was from the attorney for the Parker Group when they drafted the resolution and provided to the city the wrong parcel numbers.
Okay.
Do we have a motion?
It's time I'd like to make a motion to forward to full council amendment to the resolution to certify the property at and adjacent to 1 Jenkins Street as an abandoned textile mill site.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We'll forward that to full council with recommendation for approval. And then that brings us to table of contents away from me. That's all right. That brings us back to public comment. Hearing none, committee concerns. The only thing that I would bring up is I have heard a lot of praise for our staff, for the music and the programming that we provide at the amphitheater. I had a resident today request for some additional programming that actually includes gospel. And I asked him what his thoughts were, and he said that there are a number of local gospel groups, that the only thing that we would need would be lights and sound, and we wouldn't have to pay for the talent. And I asked him if he would put together a presentation, and so I expect him to actually come before us next month with some thoughts on local gospel festival for the amphitheater. So that would be the only concern that I have for tonight, and it's not even a concern, just bring it before the council. And if there's nothing else, what do I hear on adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We're done.
All right, it is 6:07. I will call to order our second committee meeting of the evening, Public Safety. Present, myself, Carol King, Mr. Frank Allgood, and Mr. Jason Kraling, as well as department heads and our city administrator. Both chiefs are in the house. Good to see y'all. That will bring us to public comment. Do we have any public comment at the time? Seeing none, we will move on to reading and approval of the minutes for March the 7th.
Motion to approve the minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion or corrections that need to be made? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of March the 7th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Moving right along to reports from our city officers. Chief McCone.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members.
Anything? I was just digging for a pencil. You're good.
As for the budget report, we're right on track where we need to be. As we have some stuff that we're having problems trying to purchase, deal with, just trying to get things and all that. So, but we're right on track where we need to be for our budget. And on the line number 2 on the line items, the citywide siren system, it was brought to our attention. It was trying to put a siren in place for like tornado warnings and so forth like that. So this is just informational, and see if y'all want to proceed with this. I gave you a handout that gives you an idea what it's going to look like. Prices range, what we looked at just for the pole and the siren is anywhere from $8,000 to $50,000. That's not including install or anything like that. So this is just informational if y'all want to proceed with it. It was brought to us as staff, so.
Thank you, Chief. So how many sirens would be necessary for our city?
Depends on, like I said, what size you go with, because that's a 300, this one you got here is 360 degrees. And I think, see, it only says 100 feet.
Wow.
So it's going to be quite a few.
All right. Any questions for Chief McCone? Mr. Kraling.
I know when we had the tornado last year, was it?
Yes, sir.
My phone went off, right?
Yes, sir.
Alarms and that. Is this was brought up because we felt that wasn't enough for everybody? I guess who brought this up, or not who, but why was this brought up? What was the concern?
I believe.
Mr. Kraling, so this was presented as a concern from a member of council, just to see if the city could benefit from having a citywide siren system in the event of a tornado or hurricane or some type of other disaster that could potentially occur here in the city, to alert folks that there's an issue going on.
Then it didn't come from somebody not knowing. That's what I was wondering.
It was a council member, yes. It was a council member.
No, yeah, okay. I was just concerned. Did somebody not know this was that the tornado was touching down? Was that why that came up?
No.
Just a concern.
Yeah, no, it was just a concern. I think at one of the more recent inclement weather events, folks didn't know that the city may have been under a tornado warning or watch without either looking at their phone or hearing it on TV or over the radio. So the question was, well, can the city look at a citywide system like a siren system? I believe Lawrence County has one where if there is something in place or something is imminent, like a tornado, it will be a way to blast it out so everybody is aware that something is occurring.
Sort of same thing like the nuclear power plant in Oconee. That's basically the same thing.
Gotcha.
Being from Seneca, I'm well aware of that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all I have.
So,
Any other questions, Frank?
you had mentioned Lawrence County. That's obviously not a municipality. Are there any other municipalities that have similar systems?
Like I said, only one I'm aware of, like I said, be Oconee around here that's got it.
And it would be a county as opposed to municipality.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
We have Judge Martin online.
Yes, good evening. I'm here.
Good evening.
Good evening. The only thing that I want to report to you all, please, is that I'm still under budget right now, about 8% under.
Okay, any questions for Judge Martin? All right, thanks, Judge. I think we're good.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Miller, he's ready.
Railing, Mr. Allgood. Good evening. On our budget expenditures, we're 9% under as far as spending. Also, Margot, for those that don't know, she just was picked up the other day, brought in a couple people, saw her. They did a couple of news expos on her. I was hoping to have her here tonight, but she's in training with Corporal Sefcek, so she will definitely be here at the next council meeting. That's all I've got.
Could you share for the record, please, Chief, how the name Margot came about?
Margot, we had an officer, Austin Gatufka. He was killed in a motorcycle wreck on the way to work one night. And so the M stands for Mauldin, the A stands for Austin, the R is his last name, and we always called him Go-To, so that's where the GO came from. So it's Margot.
Thank you, Chief. I just, I knew that and thought it was worthy to share with, for the record, for everyone else. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions for Chief Miller?
Just one statement. My mother lives down in Clemson, knows virtually very little what goes on here in Mauldin, but she found out about the dog and asked me a lot of questions about it. So at least from a PR standpoint, a lot of people know about about Margot.
It's got a lot of positive reviews from the news and on social media.
The hot dog lunch seemed to be a success a couple of weekends ago.
It was. We thought that basically they had some makeup ball games. So that was.
Yeah, I was out there. There were some kids on the field. I was like, well, that's good. They got a surprise free hot dog.
Right. So that all worked out great. We had enough products for everybody, and everybody was happy. It was another great event.
Yeah.
We had.
Good deal. All right. Thanks, Chief.
Yeah.
Okay, that takes us to unfinished business, which we have none. And under new business, we have the SRO agreement on page 5 of your packet. I'll let Chief Miller go into this, but basically this is an agreement that historically we've renewed on an annual basis, at least for the high school and middle schools, if I recall correctly.
Yes, ma'am. We've got two different agreements. One is for 3 SROs, 2 in the high school, 1 in the middle school, and we've also got one that rose between Bethel Elementary, Mauldin Elementary, and the Golden Stroke Career Center. Yeah, we do renew every year to keep officers in school, keep our kids safe.
Now, did I read this correctly, that with this agreement, we will now have all the schools under one agreement, or will they still be separate?
Yeah, Chairperson, yes, that's correct. So historically, the city has had two agreements, one that renewed automatically, and then one that renewed with the council vote every year. And so moving forward, what the discussions with the school district have provided is an opportunity to put all of the both of those contracts under one. So this one contract that you have before you, should council approve it, will replace the previous two and will serve as one contract moving forward for school resource officers for all of the schools.
And will it be on a automatic renewal, or will it come before committee and council annually?
It'll come back before council annually.
Okay. I recall that we had conversations about merging the two together several months back. So I just, for clarity's sake, want to make sure I was understanding it correctly. Any questions from committee? Yes, sir, Mr. Allgood.
Does the city contribute to any of this? Or is it-
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what is that obligation?
So the city pays for the officers up front, the salaries of each officer, and the school district reimburses the city a portion of that. So for the school resource officers at Mauldin High School and the middle schools, the school district is reimbursing $100,000. For the officer that's a roving officer that goes to the elementary schools and can also go to the Golden Strip Career Center, I think it's $22,000. So it's not 100% of the cost, but it is a portion of the cost.
And did that portion that they're agreeing to, the 100 and the 22,282, is that the same as last year, or did it go up or down?
No, that's about the same. It's not exactly what the city would pay for the officer's salary, but the school district has approved that amount that they're going to provide.
Mr. Crayling. All right, so what's committee's pleasure on the school resource officer agreement? Yes, sir, Mr. Crayling.
This time I'd like to make a motion to send before full council the school resource officer agreement between Grimble County and Mauldin for the SROs.
Thank you, Mr. Crayling. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other questions, discussion, cleared? Anything need to be clarified? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of forwarding in full council the school resource officer agreement, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
I have one other thing.
Yes, sir.
The sheriff would also thank me and the fire chief for participating in getting the kids in and out of Brookwood. We had the school shooting. Also, the superintendent wrote a letter thanking everybody for participating and everything. So the officers and the fire department did an amazing job controlling.
Yes, I had reports back of the same, just the plan came together and everything. Everybody worked together and
Right.
best outcome that, yeah, you could hope for in a situation like that.
Right. There was a couple small things that happened. It was like parents, I would want to know if my child was safe. So they were
Right.
a little scared and nervous. So, but everything worked out great with the fire and the police.
Good.
All right.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay, we're a circle back around to public comment. Second opportunity. All right, seeing none. Committee concerns? No committee concerns. What do we hear on adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned at 6:20. Thank you.
Okay, I am going to call to order the Building Codes Committee at 6:22 PM. All council members are present. Our city administrator and our BDS director are also in attendance. First, we have public comment. Anyone have anything on the BDS committee for public comment? Okay, hearing none. What do I hear on reading and approval of minutes?
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second? All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. Next is reports from our our BDS Director, David Deerhog.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly for a report tonight, our budget's on track for as of this moment, but we will be taking a little bit of a hit probably on our inspection line by the end of the year. Our building inspectors been unable to do inspections lately because of injury, so we've been contracting that totally out for the time being until he returns back to health. And this past week, we've been wrapping up the business license renewal season as April 30th came on the weekend. Today was the last day for the renewals, and we've had a steady flow of people trying to get their licenses renewed. We'll probably still have a few stragglers, but we'll get them in. That's all I have for the committee tonight.
Thank you. Okay, next is unfinished business, which we do not have any. So we'll move on to new business. Mr. Deerhog.
The first item is ordinance for a major change to the Centerpoint Plan development. And actually, a representative for the applicant is here tonight. If the committee wishes, they're prepared to give just a little brief overview of the change they're requesting. And if you would like, I can follow up with a report after they give a brief overview.
Yes, I think that would be appropriate.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Woodley. I'm a representative for Arden 55 Living. So we are requesting a modification to the approved PD. The use under the subject property is for industrial manufacturing office. We are requesting to add a multifamily use specifically for 55 plus living. Our company builds what we define as middle market senior living. I don't know if you can go to the next slide, maybe. Yep, no, I can maybe this is a brief overview in the corner. This is the general layout of the property. It's a 152 unit, 4-story independent living facility, makeup of 1 and 2 bedroom units. Go to the next slide, maybe. Here's a general rendering. Right now we have, in addition to this property, 9 other communities in the Southeast, 4 in the Charlotte area, 2 in the Raleigh area, 1 in North Charleston, 1 in Pooler outside Savannah, and 1 in Nashville. Oh yeah, so this gets into it a little bit. So this Arden 55 plus living came about 2 years ago. In addition to this concept, our company develops higher acuity assisted living and memory care. And through that process, there was a lot of folks that came to these buildings and said, hey, I'd love to live here. I want to be in the community around kind of seniors my age, but unfortunately, I can't pay for all the services you provide, meals, medical care. Unfortunately, though, that model, it's kind of a one size fit all, very operational intensive, anywhere from 30 to 50 people working in those facilities, the staff on a day-to-day basis. And so Arden 55 Living is what we try to do is we try to provide those similar services, but we define it as an a la carte basis. So you kind of pay your monthly rent, and then if you need in-home care, if you need medical services, if you need transportation, we have preferred vendors that we partner with that would provide those services. And then as you use those services, you pay for kind of as you go. Because there's a lot of developers that develop what we define as kind of tax credit deals, which is folks that are on Medicaid, make less than $35,000. And then there's a lot of folks on the operational intensive have to build essentially, if it's a new construction, luxury product. Because it's where construction pricing is these days, operational intensive. And so Arden's 55 plus living, there's other developers throughout the United States that are building similar product to try to cater to folks that make between $35,000 and $90,000. It's fully private pay. You don't need Medicaid, and you can kind of make within those income limits. Yeah, keep going. Keep going. So this is the existing zoning map. Like I said, it's right now it's zoned light industrial, manufacturing, distribution. So when you think about impact on the surrounding infrastructure, this use will be anywhere from 80 or 75 to 80% less traffic generating, specifically during peak hour trips, which a lot of people are focused on. So the average resident in our buildings will be early 70s. They may have one car. We park it at a much lower ratio than a typical multifamily building. It will be age restricted even within the deed. So it can never be converted over to a multifamily building. But here's a little bit more about the target audience. It's teachers, it's law enforcement, it's nursing. It's those folks on fixed incomes that either rely on pensions, Social Security. 60%, probably more, will be more from the local area. We understand that there's an immense amount of people that want to stay in their home, but we also believe that there's even more people that want to stay within their community. They want to be around their neighbors, their doctors, things like that. So just from an overall standpoint, there's plus or minus 8 million seniors in what we define as the middle market throughout the United States, and it'll grow 82% over the next 10 years. It's the fastest growing cohort in the United States of America. That the current utilization rate still be over 1 million units needed. There's a lot of people that look at millennials saying how are they going to buy homes, things like that. But the true housing crisis in America is where do middle market seniors go. Keep going a little bit. Once again, that's just a back area. Maybe if you go to some of the renderings, get into. Here's a typical rendering on some of our buildings. We're going to break ground here in Charlotte. You walk in, it's a lobby, community room, club area, bar, game room. Upstairs in the lower left-hand corner is another pub, game room. The lower right-hand corner is a physical therapy wellness center. In Charlotte, for example, we have a relationship with Atrium, which is a large hospital network. They'll provide on-site nurse practitioners when you need them. They'll have dietitians come in and give classes on Medicare or prescription management. All the furniture is kind of specifically selected, armchairs. It's universal design to fit wheelchairs, handrails in the hallway. Here's a typical unit. Outdoor areas. This building will have a small pool, pickleball court, outdoor areas for grilling. Grandkids come over. Average unit size is 900 square feet. It's got kitchens. These folks they truly are independent. I know from the surrounding neighborhood, there's been some angst about the height. This section cut here on the bottom shows on how the elevation will sit. The existing townhomes to the west, that elevation at their finished floor is about 905 feet above sea level. Our finished floor will be about 895. So even though it's a 4-story building, it'll sit 10 feet below. So it'll act as a 3-story building. The roof line is plus or minus 41, 42 feet. And then we put the condenser units, just from an aesthetics look, it's a better look. We actually put them on the roof. So then it's an 8-foot roof with a mechanical wall. This just goes over kind of the approval criteria. We think it's promoting an appropriate mix of housing, and specifically for single level housing for seniors. So it provides an attractive and suitable option for seniors that's not available today. It's obviously not in floodplains. We'll keep going. Yeah, and then like I said, more importantly, it's just not an impact on the surrounding area from a school impact standpoint, and then more so from a traffic standpoint. We'll fully landscape it and provide buffers to the surrounding area. That's it. Yeah. If there's any questions.
I do have some questions.
Sure.
Are these going to be on a sliding scale, the rent?
I mean, depending on the floor and the location, but I would suspect that a 1-bedroom would start in the $1,400 a month range. And then a corner 2-bedroom would be probably approaching 1,900.
Okay, so someone who just made 25,000 a year wouldn't be able to afford 1,400.
It would be difficult, but that's kind of what we talk about when I say the tax credit deal. So there's folks that provide the tax credit deal, so they would probably qualify for Medicaid, and so or if they make less than 35,000, there's a lot of developers that build that kind of product. They probably don't build enough of it, but like I said, this is catering to folks that don't really have an option to go to a new construction building, but still make over what it qualifies to be in a tax credit, but less than what it would go to, to a, I think Maple Oak is the newer one up on Holland, which is probably starting in the $3,000 a month range.
Okay, so if someone were on Medicaid, would Medicaid pay their rent?
No, I mean, Medicaid, it pays a portion of kind of some in-home care and things like that, but it allows them that they have a more disposable income through their Social Security. So it just reduces some of their medical and out-of-pocket expenses.
Okay, so it's not like an assisted living or anything.
No,
like
it's not.
that. It's independent living.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, you do, this is probably going to get in the weeds, but you do see Humana, United, and the growth of Medicare Advantage, the private Medicare Advantage plans. And I think we're looking into that because some of that money now can be used for housing. And what came out of the pandemic, and was probably the best thing, was that the telehealth is now covered under health insurance. And so, Atrium and the big hospital network in Charlotte, we're doing a lot of those things where we'll have a specific telehealth room. You don't have to go into your doctor if you have a question about your medical or your prescriptions. There's a lot of interesting things going on, kind of disrupting what is kind of the antiquated, older senior housing model.
Okay, I know one of the concerns at the Planning Commission meeting was hearing ambulances coming and going. Yep. And so that's why I was asking about assisted living and.
No, this, like I said, this type of housing is going to get more and more popular. It's kind of what independent living was 15 years ago. So if you walked into an independent living building today, that average age would probably be low 80s. Whereas our assisted living memory care average age in those facilities is like 88, 89. So it's just what we say is an expansion of the continuum of care, which would go from independent living to hospice care. This is just an expansion of that because independent living now it has more care, more of those things, but our folks will be relatively healthy. I couldn't foresee a situation where there is a lot of ambulance. And if there is, our property managers, we own these things, we'll hold them long term. They'll probably have a conversation with the adult children or the family to say, hey, it might be best if they need another level of care.
Okay. And so it won't have memory care?
It will not have memory care. No, we will not have a certificate of need through the state.
Okay. All right. And then you mentioned the AC units are on the roof. Will they be shielded somehow?
Yep. So it's a 42 plus or minus 42 foot roof line, and then an 8-inch pitch roof, and then it drops immediately off. And it's what they call a mechanical well. So all the air conditioning units will be in that well. You will not see them from the floor.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Matney?
Thank you. You answered my questions about the AC units, and I don't know if this is going to be for you or for David or for Brandon. How are we working sewer capacity out there, knowing what is coming down the road? What are we looking at in terms of current and future?
I'm not aware of any capacity issues that this would create, given that there are a couple of trunk lines that run. One, of course, is closer to the highway. And there's, I believe, another line that runs, I would say, perpendicular to this property, but I would need to confirm that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we feel fairly, I think sewer is right there. Yeah.
We're in the process of confirming the sewer capacity with the sewer districts. We've had some preliminary conversations and they raised no red flags. So we're fairly confident sewer should not be an issue.
If this moves forward tonight, can you make sure that that information is provided when it gets to council?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I noticed on it said no commercial kitchen, but you're having a pub, but that's just booze, right?
That's just booze.
Okay. Yep. All right. And then the other side of it, when we go to page 9, where we talk about Centerpoint PD standards, we talk about minimum buffer adjacent, other landscape requirements, other lighting requirements. It says not provided. Is that it? Something that you could also provide to council? Sure. The minimum buffer adjacent to Cooper's Lake subdivision, other landscape requirements and outdoor lighting requirements all say not provided. Can you provide any level of details for that if this goes to full council? I was at the meeting that you had with the public, and there's a lot of things that I know the public asks that cannot do. One of the things that they had asked was about the entrance into this development. Did you guys give any other consideration there with how you might be able to do traffic in and out of this particular project?
Yes, unfortunately, we're purchasing the property from the current existing owner, and then there's a gas easement that runs through the property from east to west to east. So, and it kind of bifurcates the property that we're purchasing and subdividing the 13.3 acres. So I don't foresee a situation where we can move that entrance to where it is right now, unfortunately.
This might be a question for you, Brandon. The traffic impact study, is that something that's customary to happen before or after approval?
Yeah. It depends, but normally when they submit to planning commission, they typically have a impact study at that time, but
Yeah, Mr. Allgood, that would depend on if they meet the requirements or the threshold that requires a traffic impact study. But if they do meet that threshold, that would be something that would be reviewed typically at the time when the final development plan is submitted to the Planning Commission. But it is conceivable that they may not require a traffic impact study for this project because they may not meet the thresholds for it.
While you're there, another question. When was the last development at Centerpoint?
Well, so right now the Samsung building is being converted into the Green Charter School. That was the last approval for a project in the Centerpoint plan development. Before that, the old Coca-Cola building was converted over to Jackson Marketing. They moved into that building. But those are probably the last two developments that were done there.
And both of those were conversions of existing property. No red dirt was turned.
Correct.
Right.
Probably before that, I'm thinking that the Samsung building may have been the last building built there. You may know to. What's that? Well, that's part of Bridgeway Station, not part of the Centerpoint plan development.
On page 22, it talks about the Centerpoint Owners Association. It also talks later on about on page 24, stormwater was improved by an HOA. Is that the same entity or is that two separate entities?
It's the same entity. They have a stormwater detention pond that they maintain behind the old Coca-Cola building. Now it's the Jackson Marketing building.
You had mentioned that the impact on parking or traffic in and out would be 75 to 85% less. What is that in relation to? An industrial building?
I believe it was 100,000 square foot. Oh, I'm sorry, it was a general office building of 100,000 square feet. So a building like that would generate 147 guess you got to add them up. Well, daily traffic would be 1,160 trips. It's expected our building would generate 464. So overall 60%. But most of the time, if you want to focus on the AM, PM, just because that's when people are mostly on the road, ours would generate 30 AM peak hours. A general office building would be 167, so it's 82% less. PM was 38 trips for our use, 166 for general office, which is 77%.
And going back to that HOA question, would there be a separate entity that would take care of your property in terms of maintenance and stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, we property manage these facilities. Yeah. So we take fully care from a landscaping, contract services, and then we would be part of the PD from all those contract services, and we pay our perspective portion of that.
That's all the questions I have.
How long do you think it will take for this under construction? How long will the construction last?
I would say anywhere, depending on the general contractor and supply issues, anywhere from 18 to 20 months.
And I drove out there over the weekend, and the berm that's there,
Yep.
and there are some trees next to it. How many of those trees do you think that you will be able to keep? Just because the existing trees are already mature, and if you either take them out or do plantings, it will take probably a lot longer for them to grow.
Yeah, I would suspect with just the elevation that's currently out there, the majority of those trees would probably be removed, just because a lot of them sit, I think, in the center. I mean, I think we'll probably go out there, have a tree survey done if we're able to, save some of those trees on the surrounding buffer areas. We would happily do so.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions that I had. Anything further? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just go ahead and conclude the rest of the report. So as you heard, they had a neighborhood meeting out there. There was some interest in that. A handful of the neighbors did attend the neighborhood meeting and ask questions and brought up concerns. The Planning Commission held a public hearing last week, and there were some people that came and attended the public hearing. In all, there were 5 citizens who spoke at the public hearing with the Planning Commission, expressing various concerns and opposition to the project. The Planning Commission, after the conclusion of the public hearing, had some thoughtful discussion about the project, and at the end of their meeting, they voted unanimously to recommend approval of this major change for the council to consider. That's the report that I have for you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Deerhawk. I do have a question about why it's requested to change from non-residential to non-residential and or multifamily residential.
Yeah, because the way it's approved right now allows for everything but residential, and this being a residential type project with seniors living there, and they had to make this modification to allow it. And that's why you see the addition of the multifamily residential, because that'll essentially allow them to do the project they're planning to do.
Okay, so do they still need the non-residential in there if it's multifamily?
Not for this section, and I probably should make sure I clarify. We are making a change to a 13-acre tract in the Centerpoint plan development, and they are proposing to develop about 7 acres of that. So there will still be about 6 or so acres that will remain of this property we're talking about tonight that will be available for future development.
Okay.
And so we don't know what that will be yet.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Deerhawk? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, what do I hear on a motion on this?
Move forward to full council.
For a second.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
I just make a comment. I think that given the fact that this property haven't turned dirt on in quite some time, the entire project, we probably need to revisit on what we want to utilize that land for. in terms of its the PD area. If the PD area has changed, let's start eventually having the conversation about what we want it to look like.
Anything else? All right. All in favor of forwarding this to full council, say aye.
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 Aye. All right. The ayes have it. Next on the agenda is an ordinance to rezone property consisting of 8.1 acres located at 711 North Main.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. This includes both the properties that was the former site of the Markdown Mobile Homes, as well as Ricky's Pools. There's a group called Deep River South Development that has approached the city about rezoning this property to multifamily residential. Right now, the majority of the property is zoned C2 commercial, but there is a strip along the back that's also zoned residential R20. Again, but their request is rezone the entire tract for multifamily residential. They are proposing to do a townhome style project there. And I say townhome style, it will be developed and look like townhomes, but they will be, it'll be a rental community, primarily focused towards people who work from home. They'll have amenities and other services that are more tailored directly to people who work for home, and that's how they'll be marketing the project. They also held a neighborhood meeting for this in preparation for their request to rezone it. And there was a handful of people who did come out and interested about the project to the neighborhood meeting and asked questions and talked about some of their concerns at the meeting. There was a public hearing that was held last week by the Planning Commission about this rezoning. There were 3 citizens who spoke at that public hearing, 1 in favor and 2 in opposition. The Planning Commission, at the conclusion of the public hearing, voted unanimously 6-0 to recommend approval of the rezoning. And I may have skipped over talking a little bit about the project, but let me just give you a little brief description again about the project. It's going to include 90 townhomes in this community. Again, I mentioned that they're going to be designed to appeal to residents who work from home. The community will feature a community clubhouse and business center near the community entrance. The community will also feature a central stormwater management area that will be designed as a passive recreational area. The rear of the homes that back up to Edgewood Drive will be designed with doors, windows, and landscaping and porch lights that are typical of the design of the front of a home so that they will make it look better from Edgewood Drive. And they're also expecting that community will feature sidewalks and walking paths. So it's very walkable and walker friendly, pedestrian friendly. That's a report that I have for this one tonight. The applicant is not here yet. They are trying to do 2 meetings tonight. They had a meeting in Fountain Inn at 6, and they're trying to get here by 7 if they could. So if there's any questions you have about this project, I'll do my best to answer them. But if there's...
Excuse me, 1 second. I can't hear. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So it's because we switched the time on them. So if there's any questions you have, I'll do my best to answer those. But they may be here in a few minutes. We can ask them if there's any I can't answer.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? You want to wait for the applicant?
Could we hold this on the floor for a few minutes and maybe Mr. Deerhog could try and get in touch with the folks and see how close they are, and we move on to the rest of the agenda
Sure.
effort for them to get here?
Yeah, if you want to just bump this to the end of the agenda or hold it till the end, they'll probably be here by then.
Madam Chair, I move that we hold this until the end of the tonight.
All right, we put that one on the end. Okay, next is the business license.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. We have before you the committee tonight a draft ordinance to consider as it pertains to short-term vendors that participate at public markets that the city puts on, and whether that be in the form of a farmer's market, a maker's market, an artisan's market, whatever it is that we may be doing at a given time. And this has been brought up to staff to take a look at, and we've looked at some of what the neighboring cities around us do. Cities of Greenville, Greer, Simpsonville, and Fountain Inn all take a very similar approach to what's being presented in this ordinance tonight. Only the city of Travelers Rest, as far as our neighboring cities, did we find that they actually charge a separate business license to short-term vendors that participate at public markets, but for the rest of them, they all exempt the short-term vendors from business licenses and just charge them a separate participation fee for participating at the market events. And so this has been reviewed by the city attorney and has met his approval, and we're just bringing it to the committee tonight to see if you have any interest to move forward on this, or if you would like to recommend or request any changes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Deerhog. Any questions?
Madam Chair, I move that we forward this to council for approval.
All right, second.
I actually had a question. You don't mind me asking? Or
I'll pull back my motion.
Thank you. There are two really quick, short questions. The first is when we say mobile food sales, that means they have wheels, correct?
So food trucks and stuff of that sort are actually not a part of this. So they would still be required to have a business license fee. This is pertaining to those who are setting up stands and that sort, which is the same approach that we find our neighbors take as well. They normally apply a business license fee for the food trucks that come in on wheels, but for the other short-term vendors participating in a stand, they exempt them from the business license fee.
I just wanted to make sure if someone was bringing something that was to be eaten, that it wouldn't violate the ordinance. The other part of it is on the second page, it says occupancy of portion of the public market with the consent of the owner for a period of less than 1 year. Is there a reason why it says owner and not the city? Could this be applied in other capacities?
It could say city or owner. Some of the other places that we looked at actually open it up to other public entities aside from the city, and that's probably where we pulled that language saying owner came from. But in this particular ordinance that we're proposing to you tonight, we are specifically talking about public events that are operated, managed, or sponsored by the city of Mauldin. And I guess normally when it's sponsored, if it's ever sponsored on the city of Mauldin, it could be on land, I suppose, that's owned by someone else. I don't know that we've ever done that in Mauldin, but this would certainly cover that possibility.
Can also add that the word owner, let's say Mauldin High School wants to have an event here. If they have vendors that may be selling honey, they wouldn't have to get a business license. And that's why you see the language owner in there.
I have no.
Would you like to make a motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I restate my motion to forward this to full council for approval.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of sending this to full council, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. All right, next is an amendment on the nuisance ordinance.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So earlier this year, staff was asked to take a look at this. And what you have before you tonight is a draft ordinance that's been drafted by our city attorney, essentially identifying lighting nuisances and stating that lighting can be identified as a nuisance, and it gives some definition to it. I'll just share with you some specifics. The ordinance declares that any light glare or light trespass of such character, intensity, or duration which substantially interferes with the public rights of way or with the comfortable enjoyment of persons with ordinary sensibilities, occupying, owning, and or controlling nearby properties within the jurisdictional limits of the city is hereby declared to be unlawful, constitutes a nuisance, and is prohibited. And in addition, it says it shall be unlawful for any person to make, continue, or cause to be made or continued any light glare or light trespass as defined herein, which disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of reasonable persons of ordinary sensitivity within the jurisdictional limits of the city. And then it provides various standards that basically help to outline what that all means. So there's some standards to it. Again, this is being presented to the committee to do with what you will with it.
Thank you, Mr. Deerhog. Any questions for Mr. Deerhog?
Would this apply to any businesses that are nearby residential neighborhoods?
It could, but we already actually have standards in our own zoning ordinance that also apply to businesses. Businesses are limited in the amount of foot candles that can extend beyond their property line. So businesses are certainly subject to that, but additionally, this would also apply. But that ordinance is a little more strict than this.
That would include nonprofit organizations.
Again, the ordinance that we currently have, they are subject to that, which has stricter standards.
The one thing that I noticed that's not in here is any mention of distance. Is there a reason why we did not include anything regarding distance from said light to property owner?
Again, I'm not the author of this, but I did have the chance to look through several other ordinances, and I can't recall actually seeing distance mentioned in many of the other ordinances too. And maybe that's something that it's hard to correlate, perhaps.
The way it's written, it obviously states if someone has an issue, they can report the issue. That would be my main concern is this example that we received here in this photograph. There's a tremendously close distance here. But if someone 2 or 3 doors down were to say, well, it's a nuisance, I think there probably needs to be a distance to where, yes, your neighbor can say, nay, nay, but your neighbor's 3 or 4 houses down, it's not really a nuisance at that point, but that's just my thought. That makes any sense.
In their bed.
I understand that this picture shows something extraordinarily close to one's home, but that would just be my concern is the way it's currently drafted is that it opens it up to a great deal of interpretation. I think establishing a distance might help.
For what it's worth, I agree with Mr. Allgood on that. Is this not, though, we've been coming up with a lot of ordinances lately in areas where, honestly, I just haven't been so sure that we need to come up with ordinances. I've used the phrase, solution in search of a problem on more than one occasion over the past few months. And I know that there are some issues that certainly cause bother for people. But is this honestly would this not be better solved by going to the owner of the fixture and saying, hey, tone it down, going that route, instead of changing the city's code of ordinances?
Probably will depend on one resident to another. But you just wouldn't have anything though necessarily to back you up. You would be sticking your neck out there for something they could say no, and then I guess you're done.
Yeah, I do feel that there's a lot of subjectivity in this that I just don't think it adds a tremendous amount of benefit to the city ordinances. I don't think I could go with it, but thank you.
Mr. Deerhog, on page 52, on the first page of this ordinance, the third whereas, the city of Mauldin desires to amend its ordinance to authorize the codes enforcement official rather than the building and zoning director to take in force certain provisions contained in Chapter 18, Article 2.
Yeah, so he
then and the take in force.
Yeah. I think the second then is a typo. Extra word rather than the building and zoning director. How it needs to read. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was to take certain provision or to enforce certain provisions. All right, thank you. Anything else? Okay, what do I hear on a motion?
I still think we need to have some kind of distance put in there before it goes to full council. I could support something if it has some kind of level of distance in it.
Well, so I'll just say that this light not only affects these people, it affects the people next to them. So I don't know how much distance you're talking 2 houses down, and those people are still affected negatively when they sleep at night. So sometimes you're going to have neighbors who are unwilling to do things. You're going to have neighbors who are willing to do things. So I think that so people have a recourse if they have a neighbor who is unwilling. I think that's why this ordinance is needed. Why do we have a light ordinance for businesses? Because if a business has a light and it's shining in your window, then you have a recourse. Yes, sir.
As I'm thinking a little bit more about the comment about the distance, I think probably the reason why I have not seen that in most of the other ordinances is because sometimes it all depends on the direction that the light is aimed. And that light, depending on the direction and where it's aimed at, can cause a nuisance beyond any standard of distance that someone might otherwise consider putting in there. So that's probably maybe a reason why we don't see that too often in other ordinances, or at least I've not seen it at all, is because it's more, it has to do with other factors.
Thank you.
I could see that. Refresh my memory if I'm missing it. Is there language that specifically says how to shield?
I can tell you that.
Yes. So it depends on so I'm looking at page 56, and it will depend on the level of the luminaire used. So anything between 175 and 400 watts needs to be a semi-cutoff type fixture, and anything that's in excess of 400 watts needs to be a full cutoff light fixture in reference to the shielding.
So if someone is scratch that, I'm thinking something through in my head.
The light in this picture has a shield, just so you know. And the shield is actually, so you have the light, and the shield is actually on the back side. It's flat up against the light. And so you have 2 bars of light. That's what they're calling a shield. So it hasn't done anything to keep that light shining where it's supposed to.
Madam Chair, do you know what discussions may have been had with the owner of the light that's been presented in this exhibit?
Yes. So in the beginning, this pole has always been there. The light hasn't worked in 27 years. The neighbor wanted the light to work. No one owned the light. No one owned the electricity going to the light. They wanted the light, and so they offered to pay for it. We asked them, we told them about I'll just say it was me, told them about the light and the problems it was causing. They then had Duke Power put an extension. Duke Power put a 6-foot extension on this light. As you can see, the black pole, which is actually a wooden pole, and then the light, what you're seeing lit up is the tree. So you see the light, and then and this, I will just tell you, when I printed these are now in more yellow. It is really bright because they like the bright LED. And so it reflects off the tree. So then when we kind of complained about that, we've given them options. We will pay for half if you will move the light. If it costs extra to shield it, move it, lower it, we're happy to. We have been accommodating. They want the light to illuminate their entire backyard, which, that's fine. But when it starts illuminating my backyard, when we have the kind of the ambience of our lighting, the up lighting, I don't really appreciate the other lighting that's in my bedroom windows and on my deck and these types of things. But anyway, so the next thing that they asked, they said that they would have a shield put on. So they had the shield put on. I sent her before and after pictures showing her that the shield has not been helpful at all. So next step is they're going to have the light lowered and maybe tipped. Well, I don't know if it'll be lowered enough to not reflect off the tree. If it's tipped, is that going to then shine as people are coming down the street? Is it going to shine in their eyes? I don't know. So, but that's the next step. So they've been accommodating. My fear is that this has been very hard for me to have to go to my neighbor and constantly complain. And I'm afraid that somewhere down the line, there may be something like this that happens to someone else, and they're not going to be so nice, and their neighbor is not going to be so nice and want to be accommodating. If what they're offering next doesn't work, they don't want to take the light out. So I don't know what my options are then. So, I mean, like I said, we have offered to pay half to move the light to a portion somewhere in their backyard that doesn't affect us. That so far has not been an option for them. But I'm worried about down the line, someone who's faced with this and there's a lot of anger because things can happen. And I just want, I want something in the ordinance that protects a homeowner. If they come to the city and they say, hey, you know, I've tried, I can't, not me, but if they need help from the city, it's like Mr. Deerhog said, right now, no one has any recourse. So it's just something that I feel is needed in our ordinance. I don't know that it'll ever be used like with our businesses. Have there been complaints about lighting that you're aware of?
There probably have been a few in the past, but I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Thank you. I know a lot of people have street lights that light up their driveways that they don't reflect on anyone else's property. I don't see that as an issue, but and I'm not sure that anyone would complain about that.
David, where did the language come from? Where'd you get it?
The city attorney. But I think in reviewing a lot of the ordinances, I can see that a lot of what he's written in here is similar to things in the city of Greenville's ordinance.
Is this a John or a Daniel?
Daniel.
Okay.
And let me add one more thing too, just so I share with you the information I've learned in going through this process. I believe there is a route for someone to take to file a civil suit relating to these types of issues. I've read that it is generally understood that lighting can be considered a nuisance, even in the case like here where it's not necessarily specifically identified as a municipal or as a nuisance in the municipal ordinance. But I've read and come across where certainly there's civil suits that are filed and can be resolved through the courts on these types of issues.
Would something like this affect signage in any way? We have a number of signs through the city at businesses that are animated, that change color, that change intensity, that blink with different frequencies. I know that there's one that actually blinks a weird blue, and if I pass it at night, I think that there are blue lights behind me. Not that would ever happen. But in section 18-104A, no blinking, flashing, or fluttering lights or other illuminated device that has changing light intensity, brightness, or color is permitted in any district except for temporary holiday displays. I think that could start impacting signage. My sympathy goes with Ms. Kuzner. I think that this just is a little undercooked to be served just yet.
As far as that signage, that's a business. So that would fall under the one in the ordinance for the business, wouldn't it?
Well, we actually have a separate sign ordinance, and there's specific standards that pertain to signs, and there are prohibitions actually in the sign ordinance against various types of animation and blinking. So if we have some of that stuff, they're probably very, very well could be in violation of the ordinances we already have.
But as far as this ordinance, with the draft ordinance, any light trespass of such character, intensity, or duration which substantially interferes with the public rights of way or with the comfortable enjoyment of persons with ordinary sensibilities occupying, owning, or controlling nearby properties within the jurisdictional limits of the city is hereby declared to be unlawful, constitutes a nuisance, and is prohibited. I really think that our residents need to be protected and have recourse other than suing your neighbor and taking them to court. I mean,
I don't disagree. I just feel like if I were to happen to pass this light every night, I don't live next door to this light, and I don't see how it would be right for me to have the right to say this is a public nuisance. If I am within a certain distance of the light, I think that warrants changing it. So for me, I think if it has in there language about distance, I'm also thinking of when we do have situations where neighborhoods and businesses or other neighborhoods butt up against one another. For example, if we were to look at, we have something on the docket later on for today with a developer who I've already talked about his street lamps, what he plans, but based on this, I could file a complaint just by passing by. I don't think that's what our goal here is. I think our goal here is to protect neighbors from unruly neighbors. And that's why I think a distance makes sense to me.
I just think it needs to be in the ordinance. I mean,
is this something that you could perhaps rework with the attorney?
If you're asking to add a distance, we can add a distance. I don't know that it would be anything scientific to it, though. If there's a number you want to recommend, though, we can add that into it if that's what the committee or the council would like to see.
That's what I would like to see. I'm also just concerned I am fine with making the motion and seeing this go to full council. I don't think it'll pass because of that. I think it needs to have a distance in it.
And when you say a distance, you're saying that the city would only recognize complaints from residents within a certain distance of the light source?
Correct.
Mr. Matney, you said it's undercooked. Is there something you want to add?
Again, I think that there is a lot of subjectivity here. And I feel like there's a rush to get it done. And I just can't support it in its current state. I think that Mr. Allgood is correct. I mean, if it does move forward, there needs to be something measurable for someone to have standing. I can't support it as it is.
There's not a rush. I just feel like if they can put in the, excuse me, in the ordinance, things that you think should be in the ordinance.
mean, I'd like to have some discussion with the city attorney that prepared it to get his line of reasoning based on what he pulled together. I'd like to see some of those measurable pieces that Mr. Allgood talked about. And I mean, I think if we're going to try and move it out of here tonight, I'm going to have to vote against it, but I could vote to hold it in committee until next month so that we could get Mr. Hughes here to discuss it further and really flesh this thing out if we're going to move it.
All right. That'll work. All right, so we're just going to hold it in committee. Do we need a motion to hold it in committee?
I move to hold it in committee.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the ayes have it. Let's see where we go back. All right. We're going to circle back around to 711 North Main,
We can do that.
or do you want to go on to the Planning Commission next?
Either way, the applicant is here, so we're ready to do that item whenever
Okay.
you are.
Let's go back to 711 North Main.
Brandon, actually, the slide presentation you showed before, if you want to go to where the next item picked up, and the next slide will give a layout for what they're looking at this location. So I've given an introduction, the applicant's here. I guess at this point, the question is if you have any questions for the applicant or for myself.
I had one question, if you don't mind. Or you got it?
No, go ahead.
Okay. On page 34, we talk about the proposed zoning classifications to which it states various maximums and minimums. Just want to, since you're here, I think you were going to go beyond the minimums. I think you said 30 feet. Maybe I'm wrong because we met before. Tell us a little bit about where you're thinking in terms of those buffers are from front, side, and rear.
Well, I know that we talked specifically about the rear buffer because obviously that's the part that adjoins those 3 or maybe 4, but I believe it's 3 homes. And by my understanding of our engineered site plan to date, it was 50 and may have been 52, but I'm going to go with 50 as the separation on that side. Just by looking at the drawing, and this isn't scientific in that manner, but I believe it's 50 all along Edgewood as well. Whatever it is in the front, it's going to be, I can't quote the code for what it is off of the main street there, but, and then this other back side with the road, it looks like it's in excess. So I hope I'm answering your question by saying it appears to me that it's at least 50 all the way around. That's what it appears to me. Yes.
Any other questions? Mr. Matney?
Just from an aesthetic standpoint, along Edgewood Drive, what are you planning to plant there? And I only ask because there's a certain compatibility on each side of the road right now, and I know that it needs some TLC on both sides. But to keep it from looking like a mismatch, what are your plans?
Well, I actually had an opportunity last week to meet with some members of the Knollwood to talk about what could we do in the short term because they wanted to take down the fence. And I mean, that was discussed and I volunteered to help kind of clean that up now. But in that discussion, we removed some bushes and stuff that were behind the fence and reseeded that area. And that was not a problem. I was happy to do it. As far as the landscaping, I'm not sure the species or the type of tree that it is along the road, but our intention is to not touch those, to leave the trees as they are, which as they line both sides of Edgewood now. The intention, and it will be, is to make that back side of those units along Edgewood look like front doors. So it'll be what I would call front yard style landscaping. It's not going to be just some scattered this and that. trees as you might find in the back of a normal townhouse development. So it's going to have the appeal. And as part of the plan, when we get down to that point, if it gets that far, that we can certainly show what kind of detail would be in the front of each unit. But let me just say generically, it's going to be front yard landscaping, not rear yard. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the goal.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay.
Good.
You've already introduced this. Okay, so I know that there has been discussion about stormwater runoff, and if you would just tell the committee, please, what your plans are to control that.
Okay, the site is very flat, but it has about 8 feet of fall from the far, which way would it be? It would be the far northwest edge of the property to the southeast edge of the property. There is a low spot, however, along Edgewood where it backs up to the first single family house that's there on the corner. And that low spot, I think it's probably, and if I remember my elevations correctly, I think it was, if it was 908 at the, and I'm going to use that number, 908 at the upper corner, it was like 902 or 903. That means that lower, which would be, let's see, we call that the southwest corner, the corner that's low. That would have to be raised up ever so slightly to get all that water to go to the point where it has to go, which is the lower southwest corner. That's the outfall point of this site. So we can make that happen. Flat sites sometimes can be difficult. In this case, because we do have fall from the far end down across the site, we can make that work. So the area, and I think you were at the meeting when I discussed it with the neighbor there about how it is kind of low and swampy. The idea was that going to have to be tilted up a little bit, and we're talking a few feet at most to get it so the water from that low-lying area can get to the lower, the outfall point where it exists now.
And the detention ponds.
Yes, the detention, we over-designed for this initial review of the detention pond. And over-designed meaning that we showed a detention pond not only along the front, which we believe will be able to accommodate the entire site, but to be safe, we also showed it on the interior of the site. If we don't need to do that one in the interior, it's going to be, as you've heard me say, I'm going to do this as a park-like setting. When I was developing in Ohio, I would develop my detention ponds, especially that had a lot of visibility from a main road or from units. There's a way to channel the water that they really don't do a lot of down here. I haven't seen it. So basically when there's an outfall point and the water gets in that basin, it sort of dissipates and it creates a swampy kind of area. And it eventually gets down to the skimmer into the outflow structure that takes it on further downstream. What I would do is I would create I call it a meandering stream effect, where I take filter fabric, I actually create a stream bed that's down a little lower, we put in river rock, and for the average rainfall and the average amount of precipitation that comes, that water will channel down to that part. So it won't saturate all the soils. Okay. Now, when you have a heavy rain, yes, that pond's going to do what it's supposed to do. It's going to fill up. And in fact, I could bring and show you some photos, very mature now, of that exact example that I've done before. And there's certain plant species that you can plant in there. Bald cypress is one of them. They're very water tolerant. They can get saturated for a long time and it won't kill them. There's other plant species, grasses and rocks. So the idea is to make that central one, whether it's used for detention or not, that park-like kind of setting. If it is used for detention, it probably would have to be 2 or 3 rows of what I call flagstone or keystone block walls to kind of define that area. So the plan is to provide all the detention up front and use that center area as the park. But if the center area has to be detention as well, I can still keep that park-like setting. And again, I can show you photos of what I've done in previous developments and how it works. And it works very well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, what do I hear on a motion?
Move to forward to full council.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the ayes have it. It'll move to full council.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is vacancies and expiring terms on Planning Commission.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we've been busy filling seats in the Planning Commission lately, and we do have two additional members that have resigned for circumstances beyond their control, and we'll miss them. But we have two open seats now, one for seat number 6 and as well as for seat number 7. In addition to that, we are coming to the time when some of the seats or the terms will expire, including for seat number 2 and number 5. Those are currently filled by Chris Bagley-Lunga and Brian Sofield. They have each requested to be reappointed for another term each. And so tonight, at a minimum, the staff would like to recommend that the council consider reappointment for Mr. Paglialunga and Mr. Sofield. In addition, we recognize that you've recently interviewed some candidates for the Planning Commission, and so it would totally be your prerogative if you wish to recommend 0, 1, or both of those candidates that you recently interviewed for the other 2 open seats.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
I'll just make a motion at the appropriate time.
Let's start with a motion on the recommended action for Mr. Paglialunga and Mr. Sofield.
Both are recommended actions, Madam Chair. I was actually going to move that we nominate Mr. Bixler to fill the unexpired portion of the term for seat 6, Ms. Locklear to fill the unexpired portion of the term on seat 7, and to reappoint Mr. Paglialunga and Mr. Sofield for new terms on seats 2 and 5, respectively.
Second.
Second. Okay, any discussion?
That was Mr. Bixler for seat 6 and Ms. Locklear for seat 7. Did I get that right, or did I make some up?
That is what he stated.
Okay, thank you. Make sure I write that down right.
I was kind of thinking maybe we could look at some more applicants, but
Madam Chair, if you would like to look at other applicants, I'm happy to withdraw my motion.
okay, we said Bixler for seat 6.
Correct.
Is that correct? All right, that's fine. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so this will go to full council. Aye, if I didn't say aye. All right, so motion carries. And next on our agenda is public comment. No one online? All right, no public comment. Any committee concerns? Hearing none, what do I hear on adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Aye. 3-0. I Okay, this committee is adjourned at 7:37 PM, and next up is finance.
Left. Okay, I would like to go ahead and call this Finance and Policy Committee meeting to order. The time is, if that is correct, 7:40. This is the fourth meeting of the evening. Members present, the date is May 2nd. Members present are Michael Reynolds, Carol King, and Ms. Diane Kuznar, as well as our Finance Director, Ms. Abercrombie, Mr. Mark Putnam, and our Administrator, Mr. Brandon Madden. Thank you all for indulging my attire tonight. I literally just walked off a baseball field, so I appreciate that. I may not the business look, but I appreciate your indulgence. First order is call to order. Second is public comment. Are there any public comment for the Finance and Policy Committee meeting? None online. Next is going to be the reading and approval of minutes for the date April 4th, 2022.
So moved.
Oh, second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimous. Next item is going to be reports and communications from city officers. Mr. Brandon Madden, you're up first.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I do not have much of a report this month. The city is winding down through the end of the fiscal year, and the administration budget is on par for where it should be at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Do I have any questions for Mr. Madden? Hearing none. Ms. Abercrombie.
Good evening. I don't have anything further to add. Everybody looks pretty much in line for where they should be. Hard to believe that we do only have about 2 months left. And I will be sure to keep you updated. Business licenses, as you heard David mention earlier, have come in, and we should be getting you a number over the next couple of weeks, hopefully, of where those land. And that's all I have. If there's any specific questions.
Questions for Ms. Abercrombie? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Abercrombie. Next up is our HR Director, Mr. Mark Putnam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to say we did have last week, last Thursday, the anniversary luncheon for the employees. Had a very good turnout. I think we paid for 89 meals, so there were 89 employees there and had a good time, and we appreciate everybody on council and the mayor that showed up. That means a lot to our employees. Right now, just recruiting. We're trying to recruit for a number of openings throughout the city, so that's where a lot of our focus is. A majority of it is right now.
Thank you, Mr. Putnam. Do we have any questions? Mr. Putnam? Hearing none. Our next item is going to be unfinished business, which we have none. Following up with new business, we have 3 items on there. First one's going to be a franchise agreement with Duke Energy. This information is in your packet, has been vetted by our city attorney. Mr. Madden, would you like to take this item or give us some background, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, what you have before you is a approval of a franchise agreement with Duke Energy. As you know, the city has a number of franchise agreements with utility providers throughout the city, whether that's Spectrum, Piedmont Natural Gas, Lawrence Electric, anyone that AT&T, anyone that provides utility, they pay a franchise fee to the city every year, and Duke Energy is no different. And so what's before you is approval of a franchise agreement with Duke Energy with updated franchise fee amount of 5%.
And for clarification, that was updated in 2019.
Yeah, that was updated 2019. Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is a period of 10 years, correct?
That's correct.
Do we have any questions on this item?
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to forward to full council for consideration the approval of the franchise agreement with Duke Energy.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. King. Thank you, Ms. Kuznar. I have a motion and a second to move forward to full council with a recommendation of approval. Is that what I heard? Or consideration?
For approval, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ms. King. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of this item?
Aye.
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 Aye. Carries unanimous. Forward to full council. Thank you, Mr. Madden. Next item is going to be the FY 2022 budget amendment. This is going to be on page 12 in your packet. This is something we do every year, and as opposed to as we go throughout the budget year and there are slight changes, approvals from council, rather than making those as they come up, we'll pile those up at the end. And that's all this is. So it's just a little bit of housekeeping, although it's a large number because we had several funds expended from ARPA. So, Ms. Abercrombie, you want to take the item?
Oh, sure. What you have before you is a compilation, as he said, of everything that has happened throughout the year. And we just have to come along and have an actual amendment voted on and finalized so that we can get, our system updated. But you have the list. The biggest one was the ARPA. Threw a bunch of expenditures in there this year. So if you have any specific questions, I'd be glad to address them. Otherwise.
Sure. Not often that we're making $7.5 million amendments, but that's the case this year. Questions? What do I hear on this item?
I'll make a motion to send this to full council for approval.
Thank you, Ms. Kuznar. I have a motion to send it to full council with a recommendation of approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It carries unanimous. Okay. Next item is going to be item C is a contract with Scripps Sourcing. Did I say that correctly? Scripps Sourcing?
Scripps Sourcing.
Scripps Sourcing?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Putnam. If you would jump in and update us on what this.
Okay. A number of years ago, we were challenged with finding the best medical, dental, vision for our employees, and also help with the cost to the city and to the employee. And we've been doing that over the last 4 to 5 years. And part of that now is getting into the pharmaceutical part of it. We use Southern Scripps right now for the majority of our pharmacy needs for our employees, and they have a subsidiary that helps match coupons for employees that make under a certain amount so that the employee can get a much reduced or even free copay, and it lowers the price in most cases for the city. That is for pharmaceuticals that are anywhere from a range of $350 a month up to about $1,500. As we all know, the designer pharmaceuticals are creeping into the market where they can be anywhere from $2,000 a month to $10,000 to $15,000 a month. So we began looking with our broker, with a group that can help us there and do the same thing, help employees find coupons based on their income that will actually, in some cases, lower their copay, and in some cases, give it to them free. And it also lowers and sometimes eliminates the price that the city is paying. So we did that with a group called Scripps Sourcing, and their parent company is what you see here, Grenez Benefit Solutions. And as part of our due diligence, we sent this to our legal group, and they made a number of changes of which Grenez Benefits, they accepted, except for the one that you see on page 5, number 8, governing law. We had asked them to, if there was ever a matter that we could not mediate, we could not resolute through just working through it, and we had to go to legal action, we asked that they would come to the state of South Carolina and do that. They said, no, we are a California company. and we would not do that. So if we went with this contract, if we had any legal matters that had to be resolved, the city would have to retain counsel in California and go through the California courts out there. We just wanted to let everybody know that before we went forward with the contract, because that could be a stickler. We do not anticipate that we would ever have a problem. Since I've been here, we've never had a problem with any of the groups that we have worked through with any insurance or anything like that. But we wanted it known and let y'all make that decision as to whether to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Putnam. So, forgive my ignorance on the matter, but help me understand. So currently we're with Southern Scripps. Is this in addition to Southern Scripps?
It is. It's just a layer. Like if you have
it's
layers,
a second.
they would be alerted through Southern Scripps that, hey, we've got this pharmaceutical now that is $10,000 a month. And this is the employee, and they would go forward and see if that employee qualified for coupons or free or reduced copay. And then also could the city, would the company give it to them free, and the city was not on the hook for the $10,000 a month fees. Okay. Now, I want to say this. If for some reason the employee was not eligible, the city would continue to allow them to get that pharmaceutical through normal channels. It would cost a lot, but we would never let an employee do without the benefit of that drug.
Okay. Is this an item that the employee has to agree to be a part of?
It's pretty standard that you have to go through it if it's at some point. And I can use me. This is not HIPAA. I can state myself here. I'm on a blood thinner that's $450. The group that we use currently was able to go out. I pay a $10 copay, and the city pays about half the price for it. So,
Okay. Any other questions regarding this item? Yes, Ms. Kuznar.
Thank you. Was this the only other company that does this?
It is the one that has done the most business in the state of South Carolina at this point. They've helped or worked with a number of industries and one university. This is it's a new type entity. Script Sourcing is a subsidiary of Renea's Benefit Solutions. So a lot of these companies are just now farming out and starting to work with different, on this. So this was the biggest one in South Carolina that we could find.
Did they have any recommendations from other companies?
Yes, we talked with Anderson University extensively on theirs. They have helped them to the tune of $300,000 in 2021.
Okay, so far, no one has had
no one's had
where
a
they
problem.
had to.
Their fee structure is set up that they make a percentage of what they save you. So it's one of those things. If they don't help you, there's no fee.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Mr. Putnam? What do I hear on this item?
Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and make the motion to forward to council request to approve the contract with Script Sourcing.
Thank you, Ms. King. I have
second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to send to full council to approve the contract with Script Sourcing. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimous. I think we mentioned it, but legal did that, and the only change that was made, we were sending as it was to have, if there was an issue, it would be carried in California. So, okay. Next item is going to be public comment. Hearing none and seeing no one waving, I have committee concerns. Ms. King.
Not really a concern, but a question. Is there going to be another budget workshop scheduled, or is that necessary?
Thank you, Ms. King. So I've reached out to a couple of you already. There was a budget memorandum that was sent out towards the end of the week addressing some of the questions that were still lingering. I think based on the feedback that I've gotten, the little bit of feedback that I've gotten, we're going to have to schedule one more meeting. I'll reach out to a couple more council members and make sure that that's still the case. And we'll get, Mr. Madden and I will get that date together ASAP now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. King. Again, I appreciate my colleagues' indulgence with the time and attire here. I have no other concerns. What do I hear on adjournment?
So moved.
So have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.